food. These things are woefully undervalued, in my opinion, and the equity markets had all of this newly created fiat money pumped into it, and people say it's because of deregulation, and the reality is it's no one can point to regulations that were really taken away. It's really not a regulation issue, in my opinion. It is our monetary system is finally breaking down after 30 some odd years of it being a house of cards and us just letting private banks run the monetary system. I mean, they create money and expand credit all willy-nilly, and we expect everything to be fine, and that's just not the way natural law works. So,
Armstrong, can I ask Josh a question?
Sure.
Josh, I think what a lot of people out there, there's been a lot of talk about Main Street as opposed to Wall Street. I think a lot of people are having a hard time sort of connecting the dots on the economy. That is, what, in your opinion, is at stake? That is, if we were not to pump this $700 billion into the economy in the way that we're talking about, President Bush was talking in apocalyptic terms yesterday. What do you think would be the ramifications on the economy, and specifically, how would it affect the average person walking down the street?
I believe that in the short run, it would be a tough time for the United States of America. I believe it'd be a relatively deep recession, certainly in the credit markets, because you have to reevaluate. Overall, the people that are left still with money in hand have to reevaluate what they're willing to lend it for or invest in, and all those interest rates go up, whether it's from the central banking system or even individuals. So, the entire idea of what money is worth would change if we didn't create $700 billion out of thin air, which I believe will end up being about $1.3 trillion in short order. But so I guess what I would say is that it would be tough, and people would lose jobs, and people would lose properties, and people would lose money that was in the equities market, and certainly in the
and when you say people, on what magnitude, what scale?
I think it would be mainly the upper middle class that would be hurt in terms of losing money in the equity markets, and I think the middle class and below on the socioeconomic continuum would hurt, and it would be hurt in the job market, would be hurt,
Would it approach anything like depression dimensions?
I don't think so. Simply because I believe our GDP would absorb it. I think everyone wants to see GDP growth because they know we're running such high inflation rates. So you hear these economists and even some people up in the Beltway saying, well, we need 4% GDP growth.
Guys, hold that point. Just hold that point. We'll be right back. I almost missed my break. We'll be back. I'm Armstrong Williams.
Go right ahead.
Breaking news. There has been no deal on the bailout. There has been no deal on the bailout. Things have stalled. I just want to make you aware of that here on Armstrong Williams Show, 1-888-432-1580. Josh, I ran so close on my break, I had to abruptly get out of there. You were making a point. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess Mark and I are just discussing, how it would systemically affect, the market in terms of the average American. And I was saying that I think in the short run it would be tough, but that it also would pretty quickly curb the evident rising cost of everything around us. I mean, everyone can see and feel the rally in commodities. Obviously, gas is the thing everyone talks about, but everything's getting more expensive, and it's because of this fiat creation of currency that we constantly use to bail out systems. And I think in the long run, the average American would be far better off with a stronger dollar and the rest of the world having faith in the United States credit, so that when we really do need, to have a bond auction and have it filled, that it actually happens. And right now, that's it's not happening.
Mark?
No, I mean, he answered my questions. I'm feeling out here a big disconnect between, what Bush and what Obama and McCain and legislators are talking about, and what people understand to be the issue. And so I'm just trying to create as many links as possible, because I think folks really, are really unclear as to how this is relevant to their lives. I mean, I think that they have this general sense that prices will go up and jobs will be lost, but I don't really think they understand how and why.
Sure. That's, our Keynesian economic system here and our monetary policy is fairly complicated for a lot of people, but I think that the main thing people need to take away from this is that a bunch of private organizations made bad bets, and they said, okay, this $100 million, we're going to throw a $100 million value on this, basket of mortgages, securitize it, and we're gonna loan 10-1 against it. And then when they find out that the market says no, that wasn't worth $100 million, it was worth $50 million, and all those loans are called and they're broke and they don't have operating capital, they turn to their buddies at the Federal Reserve, who are their parent banks, the level 1 banks like J.P. Morgan Chase, who are actually the owners of the Federal Reserve. The government has nothing to do with the Federal Reserve. They are private companies, and they say, yeah, we do need to, open the discount window and change the lending rules and this and that. And that is the one regulation that changed leading up to this, is that the investment banks, the level 2 banks, were allowed to start loaning 30, 40, and 50-1 when all the regular banks can only loan 10-1. The debt-to-equity ratios and stuff, and that led to this. And now that these guys have blown out their companies and lost tons of people's jobs and everything, they want to go and they want to put it on the taxpayer. And they say, oh, but if it's going to be so much worse if we don't do this. This is a bad plan, but it'll be so much worse if we don't. And yet no one provides even a shred of evidence, historically or otherwise, that would convince me that that's true. I mean,
well, that's exactly my point. I think there are a lot of other people who are waiting to be convinced on that point as well.
And then you got guys like Paulson. He's the CEO of one of these level 1 banks, member banks of the Federal Reserve. That he still has all his friends on Wall Street that have blown out essentially, and they're sitting there holding the bag, and they want the 300 million Americans to. And actually, it's more than that, because I keep hearing everyone say, oh, it's $2,200 per American, but that's not true, because we're running annual budget deficits right now, which means we're not going to pay down anything but the debt service on any new debt. So we're talking about, 10 years out, this is like $230,000 per American.
Well,
it's you got to understand how it compounds. We're not going to pay this down. We're not even coming close.
Let's talk to Joseph. Joseph, you're on with Mark Griffith and Josh Bernard. Go ahead. Thank you for calling.
Hey, thank you very much, Armstrong. Awesome subject as well. How are you doing? My question, what this guy is talking about right now, I'd like to follow on with it. Exactly, when we start talking about, like, how much do we think gas would probably go up to? I mean, people aren't putting this in terms that us regular folks on the street can understand. I mean, when folks say, how many jobs, like, give us a percentage of how many jobs and what industries are we looking at? Because I feel a lot of this is a fear tactic that people are being said, if we don't do something, you're going to be walking on the street without a job. You're going to be walking around, your family's going to be destitute. In the long run, from what I'm hearing this other gentleman say, is that, yes, it's going to be tough, but in the long run, this is what is going to be good for us. And I think someone needs to clearly state how tough this is going to be on the American people without generalities, but be as specific as possible. And I also remember that, I believe it was about 2 months ago, Mr. Paulson came out and said, you know what,